Public opinion. New polling shows a majority of Americans view the fatal shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis as an inappropriate use of force. According to a new CNN poll, 56% think the use of force was inappropriate compared to 26%, who say it was appropriate. At the same time, 51% say ICE enforcement actions are making cities less safe versus 31% who say the agency's actions are making cities more safe. So, Jim VandeHei, let's talk about the politics of this. David called parts of what's happening here unusual. Politically, in normal times, in usual times, why should this matter to Republicans? And let me add the follow-up question. Are we seeing any signs that the administration cares about public opinion? And if not, why not?
I mean, they're playing with literal and political fire here, right? It's unnecessary. Yeah. That's the thing, is that at any moment in any city, at any point in time, you have crime. And then it's just a determination of what do you do about crime? Is the situation in Minnesota that acute that you need to send in federal officials to help local officials with that crime, and to do it in an environment that you know is already
local officials. Jim,
right? But they're doing it in a way that makes it worse.
They're not even in touch. Yeah. They're not even in touch with local officials. They're coming in as a completely separate and possibly less trained and more trigger happy. That's analysis. Force that has no interaction with the community or the local police. How is that helpful? It's simply not.
Right. And I think most people can see that. And I think that's what you're seeing in this polling. And the president is being told about this polling. It's not changing his mind this far. But it's not just the polling. This might seem like not that related to it. But if you listen to Joe Rogan, who was the biggest Trump supporter, really helped him in that election, and you listen to that podcast he just did with Sean Gillis, who's really popular with a lot of men who voted for Trump, they're talking about the government being like the Gestapo in doing things that are completely unnecessary. He's losing people who he think of him as a rational thinker on issues like this. And you see it, it's not just that CNN poll, there's other polling out. People are deeply, deeply, deeply uncomfortable with everything that's happening with immigration other than locking down the border. I don't think there's a big lust among the American people to have federal troops or federal officials going into cities, going into states, and trying to track down people who are here illegally, some of whom are working and paying taxes. It's making people uncomfortable. And every Republican that I talk to, every business leader that you talk to, is deeply, deeply uncomfortable with this. The president's team is locked in a very vigorous debate internally. It's really hard to roll Stephen Miller. It's really hard to roll Noam. It's really hard to roll Trump when he instinctively likes to escalate. But he's being told that, listen, your poll numbers are going down, down, down. Not just today, consistently. If this keeps happening, your chances of losing the House aren't 60 or 70. They're 80 or 90. But so far, this is the president's decision. He's holding firm. And until he de-escalates, nobody will de-escalate.